Glad to welcome to CFWE this morning the lead singer of the Kentucky Headhunters, Richard Young. Richard, tell us about the history of the band and how you guys all came together.
Well, we actually, guys, when we were very young, it was kind of weird down here in Kentucky where we were. You know, we were kind of like in the middle of nowhere. We were raised on like a 700-acre bean and corn and tobacco farm, cattle, and just farm boys. And, you know, I guess when we saw the Beatles, the bug bit us then, and we were rock and roll fanatics, and we all still are. You know, we just love rock and roll and blues. That's our thing. So, and that's kind of where our style formed from. It was just very freestyle, all formed. It was very organic the way it all came together. And you know, you can sit back now. You know, this, like I said, this is 50 years that three of us have been playing together, and you know, you sit back and look, and you can kind of see clearly kind of why the style turned out like it did because of all these different influences. And, you know, all of our parents were very into music and that sort of thing. And we were also very fortunate that none of our dads ever said, hey, cut your hair and get a job, boys. You know, they weren't the kind of parents that followed us around the gigs and stuff, but they wanted us to do what we wanted to do in life.
Your first album, Pickin' on Nashville, garnered some of the best songs and some of our favorites. Walk Softly on This Heart of Mine, Skip a Rope, and Oh, Lonesome Me. What was it like being nominated and winning so many awards, like a Grammy, for an album that you guys just wanted to sell at live shows? We
were pretty much like, I guess the best way to describe it, if you ever seen the movie The Wizard of Oz, when the lion wakes up and goes, what they say? You know, you got to realize from 1968 to 1984, we had many great opportunities. You know, as soon as we got out of high school, Capricorn Records, the big Southern rock label, brought us down to Georgia. And, you know, of course, that didn't work out because the label succumbed to the times of Southern rock. And we just we went down there and lived in Atlanta. And when Ronnie Van Zant and those guys, you know, had their terrible tragedy on the plane, with the next day, we just came back home and licked our wounds, and then we met some great people who ran a record company for the group Led Zeppelin. They had a label that had their own label called Swan Song Records, and this was like 1978, and we were probably, I guess, being groomed to be the first all-American band on Swan Song Records. And from one thing to another during all that period of time, you know, when the Headhunters is not a different band. The Headhunters is really a band called Itchy Brothers that morphed into the Headhunters with a couple of extra members. And so we decided, you know, the other two boys that joined us, they hadn't had any situation like we had or been around record companies or anything or the business. So we kind of had a bad taste in our mouth, I guess, about trying to go out and get a record deal. It seemed like every time we tried to do something like that, somebody passed away or something. So we just, when the Headhunters were formed, or morphed into the Headhunters from Itchy Brother, we actually decided that we would make our own album, and we would just, we actually had a radio show, if you can believe that or not. We had our own radio show that aired every Tuesday night for 2.5 years, and we would go on there and play live, just like in the old days when they had live music on radio. We decided to make our own little album, and my brother came up with the name, Fred, who came up with the name Pickin' on Nashville. And so we just made this little pink album and put it out and would sell it, you know, like in the trunks of our cars or at gigs or at the radio station, that sort of thing. And the radio show grew into quite a monster, and we were just about to start having sponsors, you know, bottling companies and things want to get involved, and where we could bring in some of our favorites, like a B.B. King or somebody like that, you know. And, you know, then we got coaxed into going to Nashville, which I would have never dreamed in a million years. If somebody told me in the 70s that, you know, we were going to put an album out that's going to come out of Nashville and work through country music, I would have laughed them out of the room. But times changed, and there was a period of time, there was a small little window where you had acts like Steve Earle, Dwight Yoakam, Katie Lang, all love it. Even Hank Williams Jr., they were all leaning more toward their Southern rock and blues roots, which was inevitable that a band would come out of that. And we were fortunate enough we did go down and showcase. We didn't want to, but because we wanted to be happy and not be let down from failure. So we'd heard no too many times. So we finally went down, and all the record labels about jumped out the window when we started playing. You would have thought somebody yelled bomb threat, because we were just too different for what they could handle. And there was one guy there that was a very insightful guy that signed a lot of major acts, and Harold Shedd from Mercury Records, and he saw it, and he came up and he said, "Can I have one of those pink albums?" And we gave him one, and he called the next day and said, "Well, guys, we may be cooking hamburgers next year, but I got to try this." So they put our little homemade album out, and of course it exploded worldwide and changed our lives forever.
Richard Young from the Kentucky Headhunters joining CFWE this morning. Richard, in just a few days, you're on tour for about 3 straight months, playing a show every other night. 3 alone in Alberta. Is there any sign at all of the Kentucky Headhunters slowing down at all?
We might slow down to 90. No, I mean, what are we going to do besides farm and play music? Mm-hmm. That's our life, and we've been around a lot of greats that had. It's what we call a lifer, y'all. People that get in this business. I mean, we've almost had a new lease on our attitude and the way we want to do things. And I can't see, the only way this thing is going to end is we get to where we can't do it. Because we grew up around and have played with a lot of greats that or open shows for them or played with them. People like Charlie Daniels, who's in his 70s, and we just, God bless him, we just lost B.B. King, we played with several times. And I really don't, I think it would be very boring just to sit around and do nothing.